doing it tonight.
Oh, this is good sports.
Oh, I know. But
Got my brain ready, then you stop.
we will be picking it back up, not next week, the following week. But it's been a week this week, as it has been. And I was all ready to do Hebrews on Wednesday. That was my day I'd put aside for it. And for some reason I was quite tired on Wednesday. So I didn't get around to doing Hebrews on Wednesday. And then I had to pick someone else up, and so I didn't get that day free. So it was. So we're not doing Hebrews today.
My fault.
And Paul's. Don't forget Paul's.
Alright, Paul, you and I are in the dog house. Okay, be with the dog.
Right. Has anyone here ever made a mistake? Bucket load of them. There we go. Yeah, I want to say, if anyone says they've never made a mistake, they're lying really, aren't they? We make mistakes daily, don't we? It's the way of life. The one thing we come with making a mistake is we often just think, why couldn't I just go back and change that, don't we? But it's not about that. If we did that, you'd never learn from your mistake, would you? So that's what we're going to have a look at tonight. Some mistakes, they may be small, some mistakes may be huge. But regardless of the size or severity of a mistake, one thing remains true with mistakes. We have a choice of what to do with it. We can mope around, beating ourselves up, going over every choice we've made, saying, I can't believe I did that. How daft am I for doing that? And then spending a good day or so in a pity party, doing over and over the same, oh, I can't believe I did that. Why? Oh, why did I do that? And then you don't want to speak to anyone because you're too busy having a pity party. And life just goes really for a day or so, doesn't it? And then you think, okay, I better get on with it now. But again, when you do that, you're not learning anything, are you? You're just beating yourself up. So, what do we do? Do we go around beating ourselves up, having pity parties, blaming everybody else as well? Because it's normally everybody else's fault. It's never normally our fault, is it? It's normally everyone else's. So do we do that, or do we decide we're going to learn from it? So, what do you normally do? In all honesty, hands up, no one can see you on the camera. Do you normally beat yourselves up, or do you normally learn from it? So, beat yourselves up. Yeah, everyone, yeah. Right, okay, you all said yes. There we go. So, yeah, but it's much better to learn from it, isn't it? Because that's how we grow in life. As human beings, we're not perfect, we're bound to make errors along the way. However it is, it's how we handle those mistakes that makes it different. As Christians, did you know that you're not allowed to make mistakes? Did you know that? As Christians, we're not allowed to make mistakes. Well, that's according to non-Christians anyway. Have you ever had it said to you, oh, do you call yourself a Christian, do you? Yeah, everybody had that experience? Yeah. I normally say it to Claire, but we won't go there with that. But the thing is, we are judged, aren't we, by the outside world. We're judged by this ridiculous standard, and people want to hold us up high because they want to knock us off our perch. And that's what the world loves to do more than anything. And when we get that thing thrown at us, oh, call yourself a Christian, dear, they get an option again then, don't we? And it's normally, we go into full sermon mode then, don't we? Oh, we all fall short in the eyes of God, you know. Oh, it's only by grace I've been saved. God forgives me. Then start going into full-on sermon mode with people. Which doesn't really help, does it? Because all that does to a non-Christian is just think, oh, they're just speaking a load of Christian mumbo-jumbo at me now, and it doesn't mean the slightest thing to me. It's a lot easier to say, yes, I am a Christian, but that doesn't make me perfect. And then when we say that, That normally shuts them up then, because they don't know what to say to that, because they've got this thing of you being high up, being lofty, and you strutting your stuff above everybody else because you're a Christian, and you think that you're better than everyone else. But when you say, no, I'm not, I'm just imperfect, and then you can go into your little sermon and say it's only by grace, because we've broken down the barriers then. So, we're going to make mistakes. So, when it happens, do we wallow in self-pity and despair, or do we take the responsibility for our actions and strive to do better in the future? Learning from our mistakes is a crucial part of personal growth and development. It allows us to reflect on our actions and our behaviour, understand where we went wrong and make necessary changes to avoid making the same mistakes again. To reflect on our actions. When things go wrong, it is important that we reflect on our actions and make changes then, to make sure that we don't do these things again. It's just a part of normal growth. It's not even, this is not even a Christian way of doing things. It's just a way of becoming a better person. It is so important when we make mistakes to take that time out and just reflect. Throughout the process of self-reflection and growth, we are doomed to repeat the same patterns over and over again. And this is important, as I said, for everybody. But it's even more so important as Christians that we do this. Because, yes, as I said, the world holds us to a ridiculously high standard. And the thing is, we know that we're not perfect. We know that we fall short. But we are just trying to be better. Where the world just wallows in its self-pity for a bit and then moves on and forgets about everything, they're doomed to repeat the same mistakes. They will do the same hurt and go through the same pain in life. And when they go through that pain and suffering, then they're hurting other people as well at the same time. And that's what we don't want to do. We want to be better. We want to be better ourselves. Because when we're doing that, that's when we become more Christ-like. And that's when we shine Jesus more. So it is a time that we have to look and go, yes, I have made a mistake there. What am I going to do about it? In the Bible, there are many instances of individuals who made mistakes, but were able to learn from them and grow stronger in their faith. One such example is the story of King David. Despite being a man after God's own heart, David was not immune to making mistakes. The first reading we've got is 2 Samuel 11, verses 2 to 5. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof he saw a young woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "She is Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her. She came to him, and he slept with her. Now she was purifying herself from her monthly uncleanness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David, saying, "I am pregnant." Oops. That's a bit of a mistake, isn't it? Not a very, that's a big oops on David's part. This mighty man of God. So we're going to skip on a little bit now. 2 Samuel 11, 14 to 15. In the morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it with Uriah. In it he wrote, "Put Uriah out in the front where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so that he will be struck down and die." Ooh, so we've made one mistake. So we're going to go with some murder now to cover it up. But it's not really murder because I'm just sending him out in battle. They're going to do it for me. But he knows what he's doing. He's gone from one mistake, adultery, to murder now. And that's the thing, when you don't talk to God, when you don't realise the mistakes that you're making, you end up trying to sort it out yourself, don't you? And things snowball then, they just get bigger and bigger. Another mistake to cover a mistake. But this bigger mistake has gone from adultery to murder. And the thing is, where's it going to stop? I mean, not only has he committed murder, the order for murder, he sent it out with the guy he wants to kill. He delivered his own death sentence to the front. I mean, that's just cruel, isn't it? It's not nice. If David had realised what he had done after he'd slept with her and then turned to the Lord and asked for forgiveness, this would have turned out a lot different. But David didn't seek the Lord, he plotted murder. This faithful servant of the king had to die because David was desperate to cover his sin up. And at that moment in time, this mighty man of God, he didn't have faith in the Lord. He was putting his faith in his own actions, in his own strength, in his own abilities to cover things up, in his own abilities to deal with things. And that meant Uriah had to die. And that is not good, is it? At that moment, as I said, he didn't have the faith to trust in the Lord. The thing is, the Lord can deal with our mistakes. He knows our weaknesses better than we do. And he knows that we're going to mess up. So the thing is, there's no point whatsoever trying to cover up our mistakes. There's no point trying to cover up our sins. Because let's face it, 9 times out of 10, when we make a mistake, it ends up leading into sin, doesn't it? Because making that wrong choice is normally the first step in going down that path of sin. So, David, he tried to cover it up. He tried to cover it up from everybody, and he probably thought that, oh, if I don't speak to the Lord about it, then he's not going to know about it. But everybody knows the Lord knows everything. He knows what we are going to do. He knows that we're going to mess it up. And there's no point whatsoever hiding from him. I don't know about you, in the past when I've messed up and I've done something daft, I've not wanted to pray for a bit. Because I thought, oh, how can I talk to God? When I'm in such a state, I've done this wrong thing, whatever it may be. And then I sort of go and hide for a little bit. And I imagine that's what David would probably like at this point. He probably wasn't talking to God. He probably was thinking, oh, I just want this to blow over, go away. But it didn't. 2 Samuel 11, 26 to 27. When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. And at the time of mourning was over, David had her brought to his house, and she became his wife and bore him a son. But the thing David had done displeased the Lord. It displeased the Lord. The Lord knew what David had done. There was no hiding it, there was no covering it up. The sin needed to be dealt with. His mistake needed to be dealt with. So, was he doing the right thing now? Trying to look after the widow that he'd made? Or was he thinking, I got away with this. Nobody is none the wiser to what I did. How clever am I? Or so he thought. His affair with Bathsheba and the subsequent murder of her husband serves as a reminder that even the most devout followers of God can stumble. This was David, a mighty man of God, still revered as one of the most mightiest men of God. God anointed David king of Israel when he was a boy. David defeated Goliath. He married King Saul's daughter and became a hero in Saul's army. David became king of Judea and then king of the united 12 tribes of Israel. David conquered Jerusalem. David brought the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem. God made a covenant with David, promising that his throne would last forever. David defeated the Philistines. This is this man, this mighty man of God that did all this. And he was still prone to making mistakes. He still stumbled. He still made the wrong choice, the wrong decision. So if it can happen to David, it can happen to us. And we've got to stop beating ourselves up when it happens. So, are you going to let your mistakes take you out, drowning in guilt until they overcome you? I've always loved Thomas Edison, the inventor. Well, the thing that I know, he's a very clever guy, invented a lot of things, But the one thing that I loved about this guy was his attitude. I thought it was brilliant. He once said, "I never make mistakes. As failures, they are simply opportunities to find out what doesn't work." So he also said, "I've never made a mistake. I've only learned from experience." Edison, again, he also said, when he was, I can't remember what invention this was, it didn't work and he kept trying and trying. And he said, "I've just found 10,000 ways that didn't work." To emphasise his relentlessness, pursuit of going after what he needed to do. And these numerous setbacks were not failures, but rather lessons. And that's how we've got to look at life, isn't it? When we fall, are we going to pick ourselves up? Are we going to dust ourselves off and go, right, okay, that's why I don't do it, and then I'll give it another try? It might not take you 10,000 times to get it right, and hopefully it doesn't. But if it does, hey, I'll keep going. Because that's what you've got to do. That is the attitude when we need to have when we have failure in our life. Look at it, learn from it. I can guarantee you as well, when you start looking at things, that 99.9% of the time, the reason that you failed, or the reason that you made a mistake, the reason you fell into sin, was probably because you didn't speak to God at the beginning. We really need to get into the habit of talking to God before the event rather than after the disaster. Because that is something that we do a lot. I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about me as well. Instead of committing something to the Lord before we do it, when we try and do it under our own strength and it all goes wrong, we go, "Lord, please help me." It would have been a lot easier and a lot more simple to speak to him before and say, "Lord, I've got this coming up. Can you help me with this? Can you guide me? Can you give me the strength I need?" You're a lot less likely to make mistakes when you've got the Lord on your side. Let's face it, you're not going to make mistakes when you've got the Lord on your side. Especially when you're listening to him. The thing is with David, what set him apart was his ability to repent and seek forgiveness from God. He acknowledged his wrongdoing, sought forgiveness, and made a commitment to do better in the future. Similarly, we must be willing to acknowledge our mistakes and take the necessary steps to learn from them. We need to do the full 180-degree turn. And if that's the wrong way, and we go that way, the right way, and we find out what that road leads us to when we walk in with Jesus. The thing is, doing this, it will require humility, honesty, and a willingness to be vulnerable. It may not always be easy or comfortable, but it is necessary for growth and personal development. Like I said, you've got to be vulnerable to do this. And being vulnerable is not something that we as humans find easy. But don't forget who you've got to be vulnerable before. Yeah. It's God. Yeah. Has he ever hurt you? Has he ever let you down? Has he ever made you feel bad? If you can't be vulnerable in God and trust his comforting arms around you, then there is no one else, is there? There is only God. And when you realise that who you have to humble yourself before, and who you've got to be vulnerable before, and you go, it's God. It makes it easier. It makes it easier because you know you can trust God. You know that he's got nothing but your best at his heart. He's there for you. So, he might give you growing pains when you're dealing with your mistakes. It might give you a little bit of uncomfortableness. Because when you grow, there is them pains that you've got to go through. There is them challenges that we've got to go through. But it's that makes a difference in your life. If it was easy and straightforward, would you learn anything from it? Or would you just forget about it and move on? So that's why God allows the pain and the suffering to come with our mistakes, so that we can learn from it. Because if they don't have any pain or any suffering at the end of our mistakes, we're going to be doomed to repeat them mistakes and just carry on in that circle of just rinse and repeat as the world does. But as I said earlier, we are called to be more than that. We're called to be a higher standard. We're called to try and achieve a higher standard so that we can be a light. Learning from our mistakes also allows us to develop empathy and compassion for others. When we have experienced failure, setbacks, we are better able to relate to others who are going through the same things. If you've not been through pain and suffering yourself, it's hard to relate to somebody who would be going through pain and suffering. And if they're going through something that you've been through, a certain situation, whatever that may be, then it's easier to relate to them. And when you can pull alongside someone and just put your arm around them and say, you know what, I've been there. I know how you feel. Because I've had experience with it. But my Lord gave me the strength to get through it. Then that is what it's for. It's growing, it's compassion. And it's also being there, empathy for people. Yeah. As we navigate through life, it is important to remember that our mistakes are a natural part of human experience. No one is immune to failure or error. What matters most is how we respond to those mistakes and what we choose to do with them. Will we allow them to define us and hold us back, or will we use them as stepping stones for greater growth and success? Remember Edison, 10,000 times took him before he made his invention work. Stepping stones, that's a lot of stepping stones. But every single one was a stepping stone in the right direction. And it's about pushing through into it. Yeah. Just going on. Keep going. Don't let your failures drag you down. By acknowledging our mistakes and seeking forgiveness and committing to positive change, we can become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate individuals. So, let us embrace our mistakes. Let us use them as valuable lessons for opportunities for growth, knowing that through them we can become the best versions of ourselves. It doesn't mean that we go around messing up just for the sake of it, though. It's like sin. We don't sin for the sake of it. And this is precisely the same. It doesn't mean that we leave here tonight and think, right, okay, I'm off to the pub. This is going to be a fantastic learning opportunity for me. God's going to show me the best way to deal with this. We don't do that. We know that that's wrong, so we avoid it. We don't fall into that sort of trap, do we? We've been there. We know from experience. We don't go out deliberately to mess up. We don't go out deliberately to sin, do we? Because we know it's wrong. And if you're doing it like that, because there are Christians out there who do it, it's like you're just wanting to stay on the milk and not learn, not mature. But I'm getting on to the Hebrews next week's teaching here, so we'll miss that a little bit for now. But learning is the most important thing. Without that, we are doomed to walk the same sinful path and make the same mistakes. Can you see how sin and mistakes can be closely connected? Sin leads us to making mistakes in our lives, most of the time really daft mistakes. The thing is, in your normal state of mind, you just wouldn't even consider entertaining them. But when you start slipping down that path, things just start rolling. As David would have never considered sending someone out to die, but he'd already made his grave, he'd already stepped into this sinful path, and he just kept getting worse and worse. So we've got to learn from our mistakes. When we learn from our mistakes, that's when you can put them behind you and truly move on and resolve to be a better person, a more Christ-like person. Proverbs 24:16. For the righteous falls 7 times and rises again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity. As I said, sin and mistakes walk hand in hand with each other. The wicked will stumble in times of calamity. But the righteous, we might fall 7 times. We might fall 77 times. But we get back up. Yeah. We learn from what we've done. We move on. We go to be stronger and aim to be better. We get up, dust ourselves off and carry on. And make sure that we learn from it. We know that all these things God uses to draw closer to him, ultimately making us more Christ-like along the journey. If you don't deal with your mistakes, they end up becoming regrets. And regrets are what weigh you down. You can tell someone that's lived a life full of regrets because they're walking around like that. They're walking around with baggage on them all the time, aren't they? Because they've made mistakes in their lives and then they regret the mistakes, but they've never dealt with the regrets. They've never dealt with the mistakes. And they're just walking around in bondage. Where we walk around in freedom. Because Christ has broken all the chains from us. He's smashed them into smithereens. We've not been held down by our sin. We're not being held down by regret. We're not being held down by mistakes that we've made. Because Jesus paid the price for us. He has set us free. Do you all know the song, I Did It My Way? Yeah? That song is the atheist national anthem. I did it my way. One of the lines was somewhere in there, regrets, I had a few. But ultimately, I did it my way. Well, good for you. How's hell working out? Because that is the truth, isn't it? I want my song to be, and I want your song to be, regrets, mistakes, I made a few. But ultimately, I did it God's way. Amen. Thank you, everybody.